So, if you are a psychologist, a psychology student, or a counselor in India, your world has been full of uncertainty for the past month. We are, of course, talking about the new NACHP's draft regulation. The deadline for the public comments was October 25th, and it has passed. So, why are we doing this live now? Because the deadline passed hasn't cleared things up. In fact, we are seeing a ton of fear mongering, confusion, and a real sense of helplessness from students and professionals online. People like us, they feel like the door has shut and it's too late. Tonight, we want to cut through that noise. We are here to explain what just happened and, more importantly, what comes next. To help us do that, we have our expert.
So thank you, Ranjit, once again. And yes, you're right. The anxiety is very high. In fact, we've had people calling us up, our students calling us up and asking us about what is happening with the registration as psychologists and what will we not be able to practice any longer as psychologists. So for a long time, I resisted doing this live simply because I don't like commenting on something which is draft. It is bound to change sooner or later. But there's just so much of confusion, so many questions that it just made sense to get on this interaction, clarify whatever our understanding is, and hopefully help students, help professionals recognize that this is a step in the right direction. You may not completely like it, you may not be completely happy with it, but understand this is just a draft. It's good that the government has put it out for us so that we can discuss this, talk about this, submit our feedback on this, so that the final law can be drafted. So that's what we are doing, discussing the draft so that we can at least clarify how things are and what are our views and what is expected going forward. So
Absolutely, sir. So
yes,
before
Ranjit.
we get into the details of this draft, why did this all happen so suddenly? It feels just like it came out of nowhere.
Well, actually, it did not come out of nowhere. Matlab, India has needed regulations for the field of counseling, psychotherapy, psychology for ages. Matlab, it's probably one of the very few countries where there are no regulations to regulate the practices of psychology. Yes, there's RCI, but we'll talk about it as we go ahead. So this was very much needed. This was on card. If anything, this is actually a bit more delayed. In fact, in 2021 itself, the NCAHP Act was passed, and yet for the last few years, nothing has really happened on it. Um, there were supposed to be state councils that were supposed to be set up. 14, I think, out of 28 councils have been set up, but they are also more or less redundant. They are not really doing anything as far as the field of psychology currently is concerned. And then I think a couple of months back, the Supreme Court, there was someone who filed a petition in Supreme Court, and then Supreme Court found the situation to be very worrisome and gave a very strict 2 month deadline to the government to implement the act. And that's why things have followed, and they've followed so quickly.
Absolutely. So let's get into the draft itself. So we're going to break down the three big issues that have caused the most confusion. So let's start with the biggest one, that's the distance education. So Nitin, what is the exact status of the master's degree from the universities like IGNOU? Are they still valid or they are invalid?
Okay. So before we jump into this, just for those of you who don't know, this bill, from the point of view of psychology and social work, provides guidelines on who can register as psychologists, and there are other nomenclatures that are used as a part of the bill. What are the requirements? What are the qualifications that people can have or they need to have before they can become a registered member as a part of that those state and national councils? Um, like I said earlier, I'm clarifying this again. This is a draft that has been circulated for feedback, for recommendations, for suggestions. So, what we are discussing is keeping that in mind. Now, one of the things that the draft mentions is that the master's degree that will be valid for registering as psychologists will need to be from a regular, it has to be a regular master's. So it can't be a distance education. Not only that, they've also made bachelor's mandatory in the regular format. So the current draft states that anyone who has done uh, masters online going forward will no longer be eligible to register in the councils. Now, when I say going forward, what does this mean? So there are three parts to it, right? There are people who have already completed their masters from online universities and courses. Now, when I say online universities, I'm not talking about 1 year, 6 months, 2 months diploma programs that are done by people. I'm talking about distance online education from a UGC recognized university. An example would be IGNOU. But there are other universities that are UGC recognized have been offering master's program in psychology in a distance mode. So we are specifically talking about them. All other courses that you may have done, which are not master's degree, which are not from UGC recognized university, they are not eligible anyway. Now,
Yeah.
so there are three parts to it. People who have done the masters, people who are currently pursuing the masters, and what happens to people who are in future looking at doing masters through a distance education. So first, the draft currently is clear that you need to do masters from a regular mode, which means that at least after this draft has been circulated, the date I think has been given as June 2025. So from this
25.
semester onwards, no online masters program would be eligible if the draft stays the way it is right now.
And what does that means for IGNOU as well?
So the same thing, IGNOU is like one of the universities that are offering. In fact, if you go to the IGNOU website, it clearly states that the current master's program that they are offering is not in sync with the NCAHP Act, and that the program is not approved under the Act. So they have put out the disclaimer, but the disclaimer is more relevant for the batch that has started this year. Right now, why am I saying this? So, first part first. This is going forward. Unless something changes in this, master's program online will no longer be eligible for the NCAHP registrations. Then comes what about people who are currently pursuing? So the government has stated that there would be provisions for people uh, to register to the councils under a provisional section in the act. The catch is that the provisional section states, the draft states that the provisional section would probably be withdrawn after 2025. And one of the guidelines is that you need to have completed your master's in psychology and at least 2 years of experience. I think 2 years of 2 or 5 years of experience to be eligible for that provision for provisional registration. Now, the problem with that is if you're currently pursuing your master's, you don't have chance of having 5 years experience by the end of 2025. So, at least from a draft point of view, that puts you in a limbo. Do I expect this to go through? It's unlikely, because if the draft has come out right now, by the time the law will come out, probably some more months will go away. Any eligibility that eventually will come would have to come from the day the act is passed. It will be very difficult for government or for anybody to penalize people who are pursuing a master's program from a UGC recognized university which was approved at the time at which they enrolled for the program.
True.
So I do think there will be some leeway that will come. This 2025 guideline will deadline would probably be extended to some extent, or there will be some bridge over course that will be available.
True.
Then comes,
And
बोलिए.
no, sir, I was just about to ask you, and what about the students in the regular full-time program? Like I'm hearing
So
like
I'll
a
come to
master's
so
is no
I'll
longer in.
wait. So I'll come to regular program in a particular moment. Let's just finish the distance education bit first, right?
Okay.
So we've spoken about going forward. Distance education, online masters, more or less will stop if the draft stays the way it is. Uh, I'll give my inputs on what it should be later on. The second part is ongoing. There is a provision in the law that people can get provisional registration to the associations, but it's supposed to be withdrawn from 2005 by the end of 2020. Sorry, by the end of 2025, which makes it literally impossible for people who are currently pursuing. Then comes the part of those who have already completed their masters. So if you have completed your masters and you have 5 years of experience, then the provision already exists. You can make use of that. If you don't have the 5 years of experience and you will not complete those 5 years experience by the time the year ends, then, as I said, in my opinion, there would be leeway that will come in, because it will be very difficult, like I said earlier, to penalize people for a course that they were doing, which was approved at the time when they enrolled. Also, there is another part to this, that if you do it for psychology today, what stops you from doing it for any other course tomorrow? Which that means that all master's degree programs which are happening in a distance education can be put under questions because of this one decision that the government makes. And I doubt that will be the case, because that literally puts the entire distance education industry out of the trust deficit will be too high for anyone to try to recover from there. So that's about distance education. Uh, Ranjit, before we go ahead, any other question that you have about distance education?
Not exactly, sir, because right now distance education is on fire. So, regarding distance education, this was the only thing. Going forward, my question will be on the regular full-time program.
Okay. So as far as the regular full-time program is concerned, the guidelines right now are that if you want to be called as a psychologist, then after the regular program, after your master's program, which is regular, you also need to complete your Psych D or PhD to use the terminology psychologist. This is again going forward. I don't think any of these provisions will be applicable retrospectively. Some bridge over would happen for sure. But going forward, it is expected that people will have to complete their bachelor's in psychology regular, then they need to complete their master's in psychology regular, and then they need to do either a Psych D or a PhD before they can call themselves a psychologist. Do I agree with this? No, but we will come to
Absolutely.
the opinions about it in a few moments. So that's
Okay.
about regular education. People who have already completed masters again earlier, I don't think it will impact them. Uh, there would be some ways, like the provisional law, the provisions already exist that people who are not meeting the criteria but are already practicing as psychologists, they will be able to get a provisional registration. But we have yet to see what else gets updated in the law in the draft going forward.
Basically, I'm like completely confused. For years, we have only talked about the Rehabilitation Council of India, that is the RCI. Who do we even register with right now?
No, RCA has a different mandate altogether. So even earlier, RCA's requirement or objective was that you are a clinical psychologist working in the area of rehabilitation and want to be able to uh, administer tests and be able to sign on those tests so that those tests can be utilized for official purposes, right? If you were not a clinical psychologist, then anyway, case you were not required to register with RCA,
Okay.
or if you were not
Then
working in rehabilitation, and or if you were not working in the area of rehabilitation psychology. Now what the NCAHP has done, has it has taken the same thing forward. It is not talking about clinical psychologists will still continue to be uh, governed by whatever the RCI's regulations would be as per the current draft. uh, this draft is more about registering, regulating all other people who are not clinical psychologists in the field of psychology. They have also
who
brought
is
in the
this in?
nomenclature.
Yeah.
Sorry, they have also brought in the nomenclature of not just psychologists, of behavioral analysts. Now, there they have some more leeway, where Psych D and PhD is not required as a criteria for registration.
I'm very much clear about the RCI. So, who is this NACHP for?
NCAHP is for everyone else who is working in the area of allied health and is not a clinical psychologist. So, from a psychology point of view, all other psychology masters fields except for the clinical psychology. So, be it school counseling, be it counseling psychology, be it industrial psychology. So, all those people who are not except for clinical psychologists.
Okay. Fine. So this is actually so overwhelming, Nitin. Are there any other fine print items so that we need to be aware of?
When you say fine print items, what do you exactly mean?
Fine print items in specification to
Okay, let me
the
answer
current
it this.
education. Yeah.
So let me answer it this way. So one fine print is the 2025 guideline for grandfathering people who have already done their masters and are practicing as psychologists, right? Which I have already clarified. The second one is, which is I actually think is very good, but there is a slight challenge over there as well. So it has been made mandatory that every year the registered practitioner needs to undergo a continuous professional development of at least 15 hours of training. So they need to go through CPD for 15 hours. And over a period of 5 years, it should be at least 75 hours. Also, the registration to the councils are not lifetime. They are 5 years registration that you need to renew after every 5 years. And these are the guidelines, one of the guidelines for renewal, that every year 15 hours of CPD, and every 5 years, at least 75 hours of CPD. Now, the catch over here is that only 50% of this can be online training in online mode, and the rest needs to be in an offline mode. Uh, so there are two parts to this, right? There is one, the the impression that somehow offline work or offline training will be better than online training, which for all practical purposes today, if the institute is good, I don't think is true. I have come across multiple offline programs which are as bad as I can say, and I have come across certain really phenomenal online programs which are probably better than any other program that you will come across in your life. So I'm not really sure about the online offline. I understand why this guideline is there, but it's just coming from a position that offline will be better than online. We just don't realize how powerful the tech system has become today. At ICHARS, we have been running a almost 1 year diploma for people who have completed their master's in psychology in cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy. That's probably more intensive a program than your master's program that you would do. There's more
I
practice
totally
involved,
agree.
there's more supervision involved. You literally get hands-on experience of working with people. So only because it's online, I think we are still living in a world where we have not recognized the power of technology the way it's moving forward. And almost everything that you do in the offline setup can be replicated in the online setup right now. So that's one area of concern. Second bit is that when you make a part of the education CPD offline, what happens to people who are living in smaller villages and cities where probably the continuous professional development programs don't happen so regularly? Now they have to travel to bigger cities to attend those programs, and that can become a big pain point. And again, if this was, let's say, 5 years back, I would have completely agreed with the guidelines. But the world in the last 5 6 years has moved tremendously, in the online systems and the formats that are available are far superior uh, in many ways compared to traditional methods, depending upon which organization you are doing the courses from. Also, the the supervision, the mentoring, and everything becomes a lot more easier when you are working online. So I am a big fan of online education as long as the institute has designed the curriculum effectively. So, but that's the second fine print, that you need to undergo 75 hours of CPD over 5 years, 15 hours every year, 50% of which can be online, and the rest has to be offline.
Absolutely. Uh, Moving forward, I just want to ask the one question. Like the deadline for the public comment was on October 25th, which is now over. So for everyone watching who sent in their feedbacks, what happens now? And for those who missed it, is it like too late?
See, there's enough people who have sent a lot of they have sent comments, they've sent feedback about what their opinion about the bill is. I'm sure if the authorities have gone to the extent of releasing a draft, sharing their email ID on which they want to receive the responses and so on. They will go through it, and whatever are the steps required, hopefully they will take it. Is it too late if you've not sent the draft? Yeah, because you can't send the draft, you can't send the comments now. It is too late to that extent. But do you need to be worried about it? The answer is no. I'm more or less certain that one, any law that gets applied will be applied progressively. Retrospectively, you will find it very, very difficult to apply it. And second, even if a particular law gets applied, there will be updates going forward. Like I'm almost certain online offline education, you will notice certain modifications coming in. Though I know that there was a specific request made to NCAHP about allowing online distance education in psychology, and they've explicitly said no. I still think that's just lack of understanding in terms of how you can effectively implement these programs online. Uh, there would be course corrections that will happen along the way. This period where if you're currently pursuing your masters in psychology through distance education, then this will be a bit of an uncertain period. There will be a couple of years probably. I'm hoping it will be faster, but given that 2021 the law was enacted, the law was passed, and we are at 2025 and the draft has come out now, um, it's almost certain that there would be some time where this flux will continue, but sooner or later this will get adjusted and accommodated. Um, Also, you have to understand what does this do, right? So now I'm giving you my opinion. But before that, anything else, Ranjit, that you want to check about what we have
So
described,
as you
what I've
mentioned,
said?
like this is just, yeah. So as you mentioned that this is just a draft. So what can be the stage two of it, according to you?
No, so stage two is you wait now for the government to come back with the updates and to whether they would pass directly, table the whether they will directly pass this, convert this draft into the final document and pass it, or they would make some changes in it. That's yet to be seen. So the only thing now we can do is basically sit and wait till the next step comes. Now, once the final um, guidelines are passed and we receive them, then probably we will see what needs to be done. But at this point, there's not much that you need to do. Also, don't get worried, don't get scared. As psychologists, you obviously already understand that there are things that you can control, there are things that you can't control. Now the date for giving the comments is gone, there's not much that you can do. So just sit, chill, take a back seat, and wait for what happens next. uh, I know there are a lot of people who are into fear mongering, where they would be keep you will never be able to practice, and everything will go wrong, and everything that you have done till now will be a waste. Don't. They are also talking in the air. They don't really know what the government is going to do or what the authorities are going to do. So wait till it comes and then decide what needs to be done. Then you
Absolutely.
can
So
always
now
take it.
I'm more interested about your opinion right now.
And just before I come to my opinion, then if you're not happy with the final draft, you can always go to the court, maybe create a movement of all the people who have done, who are not eligible, and see if you can go to the court and get some relief from there. And something or the other would work out. So I am not really, if as long as you've completed your masters already, or before June 2025, you enrolled for the masters in distance education, or regular masters, I don't think you need to be as concerned right now. Also, just one more thing, I have seen a lot of these forms being circulated by people saying that fill in your names, fill in your details, so that we are going to reach out to government on behalf of you, saying that we have so many people in our support and these are the guidelines that they are saying. Please don't give your contact details to people. They don't need your contact details. You have a problem, you want to share it, go ahead and send the email. I know the deadline has gone by, but if you're still not sure, you want to take a chance, send the commentary, send the feedback on the email that has been issued or that has been uh, made available for
Approved
this
by the
particular
central
purpose.
government. Yes.
Correct. Don't fill up forms where you're giving your personal details to organizations. They're basically capturing your data. Whether they will do anything about reaching out to government now or not, any because the deadline is gone. So probably the answer is no. But eventually, this data will get utilized to promote their courses to you.
Absolutely. I was just thinking about that.
Right? So don't worry, chill, wait. Once the next steps happen, then we will see what needs to be done, right? um Ranjit, you were just asking me something.
Now I'm interested about your opinion, your expertise, uh, and your feedback on the entire draft.
My opinion, so I have a lot of them. Let's see how I can put it in as crisp a manner as possible. So let's go one by one. I've already shared about online and offline. I i think it will be a very bad decision on part of the government to discard distance education completely. While I understand that the feeling is that you need to have practical experience, and many a times when you allow distance education, universities, colleges, organizations just take it too lightly, and they would just send the book material and then they would expect you to read. So it becomes very theoretical rather than practical. And psychology is a field of practice. You can't learn psychology unless you have practically worked with people during your masters or during your supervision and internship. So my recommendation would be allow distance education but make guidelines for internships that are mandatory for your master's program to be very strict and very well defined. Okay, that is important. Also, please do something about your curriculum. For the last 15 years, we have worked with enough psychologists, enough people who are pursuing their master in psychology, both regular and distance mode. I haven't come across many people, in fact probably a handful of them, who would be prepared to work with clients after their masters is over, even if they've done it from a regular education mode and even if they've done from the best of universities. Our university curriculum is too focused on concepts and theory, and it does not provide people with the practical skills required. So whether you do it regular or distance, your key challenge still remains. People still have to go for internships, and sadly in the field of psychology people have to pay to do internships, but then
Absolutely.
again they don't. What do the organizations do that are offering internships? You're bringing in people who have no skills. You first have to train them, then you have to put your reputation at stake because you are going to allow them to work with certain clients as a part of their internship. So there are risks involved. So organizations also obviously try to play safe and they ensure that they provide training before they take people for internship. So there is a lot that's happening, and therefore, to summarize, my view is whether you want to allow distance education or not is one part of the story. I would recommend you should make use of technology, and I'll give you another reason in a moment. But please do something about your master's curriculum. Uh, okay, another part of it. How many of masters, the teachers who teach masters in psychology, how many of them are actually practicing as psychologists?
I believe that's the biggest gap because we are just learning, being a student, just theory part of it, and we are just clueless how we can take that knowledge practically, to
And if
practice.
your teachers are themselves not practitioners, how would they teach you practical skills? And this
Very
is
true.
not a criticism of teachers. I have spoken to teachers. I have met with teachers. I've had teachers who have done courses with us, right? They all want to practice. They all want to offer, at least all of them that I have spoken to, want to help students develop practical skills. But the amount of work that teachers have to do as a part of their
Correct.
regular activities in the college, from morning to evening, they're completely engrossed in that. Where do they have the time to practice?
So the
So
curriculum needs to be redefined.
the curriculum needs to be redefined, and you have to ensure that teachers have the time to practically work with patients when they are teaching uh, students, right? They need to be in active practice. I know this will be difficult. I'm probably asking for too much. But if you really want to take corrective steps, that will be one of the most important steps if you really want students to be equipped with the required skills. Um, and if you can't do that, then there's really no point shutting down distance education. I really don't see the reason for it. but in all of this, I'm still saying I understand the importance of internship during your masters, and the guidelines have to be set up very clearly, very strictly, for ensuring that students are able to do their internships under supervision. They are able to practice master skills. So all those things that are lacking in their master's curriculum is addressed through internships. But then you will have to regulate the practices of organizations that offer internships, because some of the organizations that offer internships, and we have students that we speak to on an ongoing basis, right? They would have probably been better off not going for that internship. So there is a lot that needs to be done in that direction. I'm happy that they've taken the first step to bring in some regulation at least, but more needs to be done towards curriculum and master's education than what we are really seeing focus on. Hopefully, this will be the next phase of what government expects to do. So this is
But
one.
on the other hand, sir, I believe organizations and institutes, people who are offering online education as well, they have got more comprehensive and more practical things that people are not even learning in masters as well.
No. So, Ranjit, that's actually the point. It's not about online or offline, it's about an institute. I know of institutes that are offering offline programs, 1 year diploma, but they don't teach anything practical. They are basically replicating what people have done in their master's program.
Masters, yes.
Max, they would probably be talking about additional theory, additional concepts, and so on, and then make people practice with each other, right? And that too in a role play format. Um, I also know, for example, like we spoke about us, so we do offer programs which are incredibly intensive in terms of practice sessions and supervision. So it's not really about online or offline. There are other online institutes that do as bad a job as you can think of, right, when it comes to their curriculum. So again, what I'm clarifying is, don't get stuck in this idea of online offline. Look at the curriculum design, what the institutes are doing, and so on. So there are effective ways of providing quality practical education and experience to psychology students, even online, provided the organization or the government is serious about putting their mind to it and then making it happen.
True. Very rightly said.
Ranjit, any other question
Yeah.
you have about this?
I believe so. You have covered overall anything and everything that could be covered under this topic, which is again covering the distance education, people who are already doing it, the future thing, everything has been covered very beautifully. So now I
So I
think we
have so
can.
I have a couple of other things that I want to add in terms of my view. Right.
Okay,
So I
for
spoke
sure.
about distance education and regular courses. The second bit of it is, we know of so many students who were not from psychology background. They enrolled for our courses, and because we have an eligibility that before you learn trauma work with us, you need to enroll for a master's program. A lot of these people, because they were serious, they wanted to make their career in this field, actually enrolled for master's programs so that they can continue doing the courses that we were offering. Right now, once you take the distance education off, consider what happens to people who in their earlier years took up a different bachelor's, did a different master's, they probably did a job and so on. They Now they are looking at a transition. They are serious, they are committed, but to be able to do 2 years full-time education, where eventually you will still have to do certain additional certification courses because you don't develop the skills, the practical skills in the college.
Yes.
Uh, you are just demotivating people from pursuing psychology further. And what will happen because of this? Because eventually, when we're talking about this law, what is it about? It's about calling yourself a psychologist. It's not about who you work with. Today, also, if someone doesn't want to call themselves psychologists, they can call themselves healers, they can call themselves therapists, they can call themselves spiritual gurus. They're all trying to work with patients, clients. They may not call them patients, they may not call them clients, they may give them some other terminology, but they're still trying to work with, or they're making an effort to work with the same set of issues, right? They work with trauma, they work with, I get so many clients who have been through other healers, who have been through spiritual groups, and then their condition has gone from bad to worse by the time they come to me. So even if you bring in this regulation, the only thing you're bringing in is you're saying that you can't call yourself psychologist, but you can call yourself something else and still work with the same set of people. which I think is actually a bigger problem, because what you are doing by making entry into psychology difficult is you're actually encouraging more people to go through that route. So even those who are serious about getting a stronger conceptual base in psychology will now feel, what's the point of, because I can't do regular masters is not going to give me legal eligibility, distance is not going to give me legal eligibility to call myself psychologist, so I may as well call myself a healer and a therapist. There is not much that you can do about that, right? So that's the second part of it. If the government is serious about this, about regulating the practice, the 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 field of psychology and the field of working mental health, then don't just regulate education, regulate who can work with what kind of issues, right? So have regulations where people who are not from psychology background should not be allowed to do trauma work, should not be allowed to work with intense negative emotion disorders. Once you regulate that, then there is a lot of motivation for people who are serious about this field to say, "Ki, chalo, I will do masters." But if the idea is I can't call myself psychologist, I can call myself a healer, then well, it's okay. I'll call
So it
myself
is
a healer.
just like shutting up the one door and opening up the rest of the others.
Correct. And you are shutting up a door that actually was at least making people conceptually um, more sound. Practical skills, so like I said, they would have still wanted to develop through other certificate courses and so on, right? But now what happens is people get into healing without really understanding the background psychological concepts, and then they do some really not so interesting
There is
things
no
out,
point to it.
right? And that's, for me, that's a bigger worry, that this bill will end up encouraging those practices even more. Right? I'll give you an example. For years, coaches, the field of coaching has tried to create a demarcation between coaching and therapy. Most coaching institutes traditionally have been very upfront in explaining to their students, to those people who are registering or who are doing courses of coaching certification with them, that you can't work with past related issues, you can't work with intense negative emotions, you can't work with trauma. Generally speaking, most coaching institutes create a very clear guideline. But now you have people saying we are trauma coach. There are courses claiming that as a coach, learn to work with trauma by doing this course. Now, what are you doing? You're actually encouraging more and more people to do those courses. So, while the intention behind the draft is positive, it's a good move. It's a good first step, and I'm glad that government or whoever it is who decided to put their head together, and the Supreme Court for insisting upon it, that something was done about it. But the way they are going forward, the long term implication, if they don't take corrective steps, will probably be worse than what it is right now. Actually, no, it can't be worse
Very
because
right.
those people are still practicing right now. But yeah, there's still an additional demotivation for even those people who would have probably wanted to become more sound in the
There's
conceptual
this about it.
grasp of
Yeah.
the. Okay? So that's another part of it, and that is one of the things that I'm more severely concerned about. That more and more people will go. Those who are interested in this will now start opting for that. Um, so that needs to be considered and taken care of. Um, Third, about this PhD bit, right? That PhD is required for registering as a psychologist. Again, while I understand the importance of research and so on, you want to focus more on practical skills that those psychologists have for working with patients and working with clients. Uh, you can tie up with people who have done PhD for research work, but at times the skill sets required are not necessarily the same, or at least while there may be some overlap, but there are additional skills required which may not be required for people who are practicing as counseling psychologists. And then that additional uh, hassle of having to go through it. We are already complaining that we have less number of registered psychologists or less number of skilled psychologists available, and therefore people go to this to alternative therapies which may not necessarily be uh, as effective as traditional psychology should have been. Let's put it this way, right? But you are just, by doing all of this, you are not bridging the gap between the number of practitioners required and the number of practitioners available. You are only making it more difficult to bridge that gap. So keep these things in mind. Consider this. This is a request to government. I know this is a humble request from one individual, probably supported by a few hundred students, a few thousand students that we have worked with, but it's still a request to be considered. And I have confidence if they've taken this step, they're serious, they will probably take the corrective steps required going forward.
Same. Is there anything else, sir, that I might have missed on asking any question which is specifically related and which is of more concern to this topic? You can just put forth your light or your views on that as well.
No, I think from my point of view, we have covered most of the questions you have asked me. We have also spoken about my views of some of these things. I don't think there's anything that comes to my mind right now. I think there were certain questions that you had received from Shifa and Arbina that they had got from people when we had told them that we are going to do this live. Just see if any of those questions are still pending. I think you have them available with you. So just go through them
Yes, I
once.
do have. I do have. Uh, so we have already covered the question
So,
related to people
Ranjit,
who are.
just one second. Meanwhile, in the um, comments on YouTube, I see Bhanumati ji has asked about what about life coaches. Bhanumati ji, I've just clarified this. Life coaching per se is a non-regulated field. This regulation has nothing to do with life coaching. But my worry is that now more and more people will start calling themselves trauma coaches and so on to bypass the regulations that have come in, which is doing more harm than good per se. And what about the loopholes? I think we have discussed some of the loopholes that I'm aware of. If there's anything else that you want to discuss, just put it in the comment and I would be more than happy to take that up. Ranjit, you were saying something.
So one of the important question is, what about those people who are already in job and like what will be the impact on those people?
So, like I said, in my understanding, most laws that are implemented going forward. So, it's very difficult to implement a law retrospectively, uh,
Okay.
which means people have already completed their masters, right? The current draft itself mentions this, that there are provisions within which people who are already practicing as psychologists but don't meet the criteria that has been listed in the draft can get a provisional registration. Um, so I no, I don't think there is any problem for those people. Something or the other would be available. Either they will be allowed to register based on what they've done, or there would be a internship requirement or a bridge over course that they would have to complete before they register. But they don't need to really worry about it. If you've already completed your masters, again, I'm saying masters from a UGC recognized university, because I have got a lot of
Um,
people who get in touch with us telling, because like I said, our courses have an eligibility criteria that before you go into level 3 where you learn to work with trauma, you need to be from a master's background in psychology, right? So I've got these people telling me that Nitin, 6 महीने का एक डिप्लोमा अवेलेबल है, 1 साल का एक डिप्लोमा है जो इंस्टीट्यूट कर रहा है, कैन वी डू दैट? So those are not your master's program. Your master's program is from a UGC recognized university. It is MA, MSc. It has to be one of these two.
Absolutely.
If
Fine.
you've done this
Uh,
yourself, lovely.
More or less, we have covered everything as of like when it comes to doubts or worry or questions. We have covered most of the things, almost like everything.
All right, perfect.
Uh,
So, if any of you have any questions that you would want me to take up, please let me know. Put it in the comments. Bhanumati ji, thank you. She has just mentioned that I've answered the queries that she had. So, we did this one episode today because of I'm just seeing so many people being very worried about it. And if you're a psychologist and you're worried about how this law would impact you, and that worry is actually making you feel overwhelmed, anxious, please visit another therapist. As therapists, we also need to at times seek help from other
Absolutely.
therapists, right?
Very rightly
So
said.
this is a good opportunity to benefit from the work of the field of psychology. So that is one. Second, uh, keep focusing on your work, keep developing skills. There are people who are available to help guide you. So reach out to us in case you have any questions or queries, and I'll be more than happy to take it up in the next video. Just one more thing, under ICHARS Support Foundation, which is our NGO, we are going to start a series where we will take up discussions by other people on mental health, where we notice that those discussions have probably led to miscommunication or have led to more misunderstanding, or they're presenting views which is hurting the field of mental health, and so on. So we will have videos where we will have clippings of those conversations, and we will have commentary on top of them to help people understand what our views are, and to also hopefully send a message to those people who have created those videos on why we feel what they've said probably requires reconsideration, and why they need to update their knowledge, their information about the field of mental health if they want to pass a commentary on it. Otherwise, please
Definitely.
continue having conversations about topics that you want to have. But if you don't know about mental health, don't talk about it. And please, for God's sake, don't say I am not an expert, so don't listen to me. But because when you say
That
but, you're basically
automatically
saying
grabs
listen to
the
me.
attention.
And if you are so-called influencers, a lot of people get swayed by you. So this is again not to say that I know everything and I know better than you. This is only to clarify that if you don't know, you don't know, then don't qualify that statement by saying but. Right? So please consider it, and we are planning to have a series of those videos. If you come across videos like this that you want us to do commentary videos on, please share them with us on any of our social platforms, and I will have our team looking at those videos, checking if there are any sections of those videos that we need to um, do a conversation on. I may not be the one involved with that particular series. That will be under ICHA Support Foundation. So primarily it will be Misbah and the team that's looking at ICHA Support Foundation. But I would keep jumping in and out from time to time as and when they require my help or my assistance. So thank you everyone who have joined us today, and thank you Ranjit for hosting us. I'm sure there are a couple of things that you need to say before we end the session. So please go ahead.
Thank you so much, sir. That brings us to the end of this insightful discussion. A very heartfelt thank you, Mr. Nitin, and for sharing your valuable viewpoints, your perspectives. And to all of you who have joined us live, thank you so much to each and every one of you. If you found this session helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. As sir have mentioned about the new upcoming projects, you all will be notified by that for that as well. Uh, Kindly do subscribe to the YouTube channel as well for more insightful and meaningful conversations related to psychology, therapy, and education. Thank you once again, and we'll see you in the next live session.